get so nervous to film. I hope nobody's looking at me right now. But I just went to the cutest tea shop. Oh my god. Anyways, I got nervous. But I just went to the cutest tea shop. Oh, that's why the lighting is changing a lot. It was adorable. I loved it. It's called Tea and Sympathy. If you live in New York City, it's a must. But yeah, so now I'm in the park. I'm gonna read and chill. It's been a minute. Yeah, so I haven't recorded in a long time because I've been so busy with work and school, but you know what? I'm here now, and Miso is too. But yeah, so I think I just showed me making some banana bread like just now in the previous clips, and this time I put some like a butterscotch chips in it, and I made some banana bread like maybe like a week ago, and I put chocolate chips in it. So good. Yeah, I can put the recipe probably like here. So this is the recipe I use, and yeah, like I love it every single time. It is so yummy. One thing that I usually do, which I don't know if it's correct. I don't know if it is, but I've been doing it and I feel like it makes a difference. Put the baking soda in last. And for some reason in my head, I'm like, oh, it's fluffier. It also may be because I put an extra egg in the recipe. I don't know if I included a picture of it here or if I included like my own recipe, but basically I just put 2 eggs in the recipe and it makes the bread like fluffier. And then like I said, I put the baking soda at the end. I don't know if that changes anything, but I do it and it feels right to me. So, all right, so we're making banana bread, and we had leftover caramel as well. So we mixed a little bit of that into it too. So it's in there right now. And we'll do a little taste test. Some pretty sunflowers, and like, there's not enough for the vase that it's in. But, I don't know, friend. This is how it's looking right now. And I just put them all to the front so you can just like see them from this perspective. But yeah, don't look too hard, okay? Anyways. Cheers, friends. Hello friends, so I have a bunch of books to talk about today. I have some spring recommendations and also some books I have not read yet, but we'll get into it a little bit, talk about them, and hopefully I will like them, we'll see. Maybe I'll do like a bit of a spring reading vlog here and we can see how we actually like these books in practice, right? I will start with what I think is the epitome of spring from the books that I've read. I haven't read a bunch, I would say. I haven't really read any Jane Austen or anything like that. I do have one right there. This is Pride and Prejudice. And then I do have one that I'm going to read this spring, but I'm late to the start, okay? I'm late to the game, okay? So if you tend to like this sort of genre, or sort of you read atmospherically, I guess, if you read based on the seasons is what I mean, then you probably have read this book before. But the first one I'm going to recommend is Anne of Green Gables. I love this book so much. The first time I read it was last year, and it follows this very sweet, very talkative orphan, and she's mistakenly sent to live with these two older folks who are siblings, and they live in this house and it's called Green Gables. And at first, you know, it was a mistake, so they weren't on board with it. But after seeing Anne's personality and her sort of desire to have a good life and just enjoy her life, they fell in love with her. They decided that they wanted to take care of Anne and raise her, and she looks at her life in Green Gables and she points out such beautiful things throughout the story. And I truly just love this book so much for how it kind of brought to my attention, I guess, like how wonderful each season can really be. Especially, you know, like we're talking about spring, it gives very spring. I mean, look at this cover, right? It's stunning. Put in the light too. There's such like beautiful quotes in here. She loves so hard, and I want to be like her, truly. If I could have a tea party with one character or like a few characters, the first one I would pick is Anne Shirley Cuthbert. So the air was sweet with the breath of many apple orchards, and the meadows sloped away in the distance to horizon mists of pearl and purple, while the little birds sang as if it were the only day of summer in all the year. And I know that one's about summer, but like, it still applies, okay? It's cute. I like it. This is another one too that I saw. Isn't it splendid to think of all the things there are to find out about? It just makes me feel glad to be alive. It's such an interesting world. It wouldn't be half so interesting if we knew all about everything, would it? There'd be no scope for imagination then, would there? But am I talking too much? People are always telling me I do. Then she goes on. But yes, that's the other quote I saw. I know there's a lot more in this book that are really good. She says this one line about Octobers and how she is so thankful. She lives in a world where there's Octobers. And I feel her, you know? I feel you, girl. Okay. Thumbnail. Let's get it. This is very serious, guys. Abe is over there. I hope he's not listening to me, because if he is, I will be mortified, absolutely mortified. I noticed that some of the last clips that I filmed, talking about the books that I want to read and I have read in the past that are kind of like springy reads, the audio was not that great, and the reason for that is because there's construction outside my house currently. Yeah, that's really fun. But you know, it's okay. It's like, it's a busy blog. It's New York City. It happens. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna film this again. Hey, yes, if you're wondering, I am wearing the same outfit. But you're not gonna say anything about it because that would be rude. And another thing, different teacup. And I am drinking the Trader Joe's Blood Orange Rooibos tea. It is so good. You should get it. It's really yummy. I love it. I'll just refresh your memory and just kind of tell you real fast. I was talking about Anne of Green Gables last, okay? So just so you understand exactly what this book is about, real fast, something that I think I missed in that last clip when I was explaining it is that Anne, she is coming from an orphanage. The two people that end up adopting her are two siblings. They live on a property called Green Gables. That we understood, right? But one thing I forgot to say is that the mix-up that happened is that they thought that they were adopting a boy, but there must have been some miscommunication because they ended up getting a girl, right? And so they were like, we don't want a girl, we want a boy. Why did you bring a girl? Especially so the two siblings, there's Matthew and Marilla. Matthew brings Anne home to Green Gables, and Marilla's like, this child is not a boy, so we don't want her. And so there's some, Anne was obviously distressed. She was like, what do you mean you don't want me? Because the whole time, while she was in the wagon ride with Matthew, he didn't mention anything about, the mix-up. And so she was obviously very hurt. And that's kind of like where the story starts. It's a classic story. It's really beautiful. I loved it when I read it. And it has a bit of damage on my book here because I took it to the beach one day and it actually started raining. So that's how that happened. I will be reading it again, maybe not this spring because I want to get into some other spring books, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it was really good. I highly recommend Anne of Green Gables. Next book we have is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. Oh my god, this book, when I first read it, it was so good. I loved it so much. It basically follows our main character. Her name is Kitty. Kitty is participating in the London season. Many people in England at the time would participate in the marriage season that occurred, I think, in the 19th century. It was very important for people to find their husbands and wives around this time. A lot of people love to read about this marriage season because it's so interesting. It's like the perfect setting for a romance. So these Regency novels that usually fall into this genre, I haven't read a lot of them. This is like probably the first one I read, so maybe it's probably like the first one I read, but truthfully I think it's a really good book. Our main character, she has a lot of siblings. I can't remember how many. I'm gonna have to guess 4. Yeah, probably like 4 siblings or something like that. So she decides she needs to participate in this current marriage season because she needs to find a husband, more specifically a fortune, okay? She is living in her family home with her siblings, and the issue that we have here is that her parents had recently passed away, and so she is kind of left to take care of her family. She only has 12 weeks to find a husband and his fortune and to set her family up for life, basically, because they have a lot of debt and everything is kind of crumbling, right? And so she decides that the best way to fix the situation is to marry rich. The story kind of develops from there. That's like the very beginning. It's explained in the plot synopsis. I really liked this book. I thought it was really fast-paced. It's not very long at all, but I thought it read really fast and it was really interesting. So I probably read it in like 3 days or something like that. I really enjoyed this book. So that is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. So those are the 2 books that I have read that I feel like fit into the spring sort of vibe. But now we have books that I have not read. I guess I'll start with what I'm reading currently. I'm reading it on my Kindle right now, but it's called A Psalm of the Wild Built. It's really good so far. I like it. The 2 characters we're focusing on is a monk and then a robot. We start off with the monk, who is our main character, right? Their main job that they have is gardening, so they're a gardening monk, and they live in a big city. One day they start to notice that they're not hearing any sounds of things that are alive, right? And they recognize that there's lots of beetles, lots of types of bugs and birds that live in the city, but one thing they don't hear a lot is crickets. So they don't hear any crickets, and so they realize that where they're living is not fulfilling for them anymore. And at one point the city was like super exciting and super different from wherever they were from originally, but it wasn't working out. And so they decide that they're going to move somewhere that's more remote, right? And our main character's name is Sibling Dex. I forgot to mention that. So Sibling Dex then moves to a more remote part. And from there, the story develops. I don't want to say too much because it's a very short book. You kind of just have to read it, you know? I don't think it will take you very long. But personally, I think it's really good. It has some really like good quotes that I keep like highlighting and stuff on my Kindles. I can save it for later. But there's lots of good quotes in there that I really like. I really like the scenery too, and a lot of the things that are described. It's so beautiful. So I would definitely recommend A Psalm of the Wild Bill. Next, we're kind of going back to what we were just discussing, right? It's very similar to don't look yet. This book sounded interesting to you. A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. Okay, I have not read this book yet, but it sounds very similar to this, A Proper Charade. Okay, so these are both Regency romances, right? But they kind of take a different approach to it, rather. So this one, we have a girl specifically trying to gain her fortune. With this one, we have a woman searching for money to support her family. And then in this one, we have our main character. Her name is Patience, and she is she's upper class. At one point in the story, I think her brother accuses her of being frivolous, and she didn't like that. And so she decides that she's going to go undercover as a maid and work for a house to prove that she can take care of herself, and she's not frivolous. And the romance develops from there. But I thought that this book sounds adorable, and it's not long at all. And I was like, I want to read this spring. So we have A Proper Charade. Next, we have the epitome of spring, okay? The woman herself, the myth, the legend. We have Emma by Jane Austen. So I've heard so many great things about this book, about how this character she is meant to be somewhat unlikable because of her personality, and she seems like very, very forward, right? But I feel like that character sounds so interesting and like lovely to read about. And so I've heard that Emma herself is a bit of a matchmaker, and she tries to pair people together and whatnot, and that sort of gets her into entanglements, might we say. But yeah, so it gets her into some sort of situations and whatnot. But once again, this is, I believe, a Regency romance as well. So obviously it's up my alley. It's quite long, but that's okay. You know, I heard that it's very funny too. So we have Emma by Jane Austen, a classic. The final book that I have is called Braiding, Sweetgrass. And this book is nonfiction. It's a collection of essays that center around indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. One quote that I saw on the back of the book: in Braiding Sweetgrass, Kimmerer brings these lenses of knowledge together to show that the awakening of a wider ecological consciousness requires the acknowledgement and celebration of a reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. For only when we hear the language of other beings are we capable of understanding the generosity of the earth and learning to give our own gifts in return. That sounds really interesting to me. So once again, nonfiction book for spring, I would say, and just more educational, which is important too. So this book is Braiding Sweetgrass. Those are my spring recommendations for spring reading, getting into the spirit of spring and everything waking up from a long winter's nap. So if you end up reading any of these, let me know. Comment down below. Or if you know me, text me. Let me know if you read it. And yeah, hopefully I can film a video or something like that in the future of reading, like a reading vlog or something like that, of a few of these books. So yeah, that's the plan for spring. And I'm sure I'll end up reading some other things too, other spring related things as well, hopefully. So we'll see what happens for the spring. Yeah, peace and love, and talk to you soon.